Hi, everyone. So it's 1 o'clock. My name is Emma, and I work with Wellington Water Watchers and the 2Rivers Festival. So this event is part of the 2Rivers Festival. Um, so it's a nature in transition event with Arch. Um, so just letting you know that the 2Rivers Festival is a festival that appreciates and celebrates the Speed and Aramosa rivers in the city of Guelph. And we just really want to thank Jasper, who is the host of this event, and Arch um, for sharing your passion for the rivers with us. And thanks to all of you for coming. The festival is run by volunteers and involves a lot of community organizations. It's the last day of May, and we've had a whole month of events, and we have a whole another month of events happening in June. So please go to our website and check them out. It's www.2riversfestival.org. Please do what you can to support the organizations that we are partnering with and the good work that they're doing in our community. Check online to see all the sponsors that have helped us make this festival possible. And this year we had a festival sponsored, the Guelph Outdoor School, who donated a lot to help make it work. Again, a project of Wellington Water Watchers. Just so you know, we are recording this session. So if you are comfortable, you can turn your video on or just turn it off. We're recording it in case anybody who wasn't able to come wanted to view the session. I will hand it over to Jasper. So thank you for coming.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. I also want to shamelessly plug, this is like a triple hosted event. This is hosted as also part of Guelph Pride, which is kicking off in full-fledged online virtual festival form tomorrow. So that'll kind of right in the middle of the 2Rivers Festival. And I know there's a lot of communities there that overlap. So if you're interested, check it out, guelphpride.com. They have a full list of events. Hopefully you can connect in more ways. It's a wild time, so I do want to start off with a bit of an acknowledgement. We are on the land of the Anishinaabe with our Haudenosaunee and Métis neighbors. One of my favorite things that I've learned about this beautiful land that I call home and that I live and work and play and build community on is the fact that the 2Rivers and where they meet was historically known as the meeting place. And someone once told me that it was historically known as somewhere where people who had become lost seemed to be found. And that's always really stuck with me, especially as a queer person, as a trans person, as somebody who grew up as both of those things in a very small rural town that wasn't as welcoming. Coming to Guelph, I really found a home in the queer community here, and have since built my home here and live here and I'm deeply rooted here. And the 2Rivers has always been a very special place in my heart. So I'm glad to call this place home, and I'm thankful for the people and animals and living things existing here since time immemorial. That being said, I do want to open with a Mary Oliver poem. I'm sure we're all big fans, but I do want to dedicate this to the living memory of a few people and honestly many more. Specifically, George Floyd, who was recently killed by police and was remembered as always going out of his way to help people who were less fortunate. He was grounded, he was spiritual, he was an organizer, he was a comforter, he was an encourager. Also, Breonna Taylor, who was a Kentucky EMT who was shot in her home right beside her partner, who not only had to witness the wrongful murder of his longtime beloved, but was also attempted to be framed for it and arrested for it, has since been cleared of those charges. And also, especially when we're talking about LGBTQ communities, remembering Tony McDade, who was shot and killed by a police officer in Florida this past week and has been repeatedly misgendered in reports despite being overly underreported. We did lose a community member as well. And for folks who really think that this kind of stuff doesn't happen in Canada, I also want to take some time to recognize that people are demanding justice for Regis Korchinski-Paquette, a 29-year-old Black woman who who was allegedly pushed from her apartment balcony by Toronto police. She was remembered as a talented gymnast who had used her skills to teach children and give back. She was known as a well-known pillar of her community. So I'm going to start by opening with a poem by Mary Oliver, and then I will have a moment of silence and hope that you'll join me. This is an excerpt from To Begin With, The Sweet Grass. What I loved in the morning, I think, was mostly myself. Never mind that I had to, since somebody had to. That was many years ago. Since then, I have gone out from my confinements, through with difficulty. And I have become a child of the clouds and of hope. And I have become the enemy, the friend of the enemy, whoever that is. I have become older and cherishing what I have learned. I have become younger. And what do I risk to tell you this, which is all that I know? Love yourself, then forget it. Then love the world. And I hope you'll join me in a moment of silence to remember people that we've lost this. Okay. I realize that we're starting this off on a bit of a heavy foot, but I was hoping to focus on the work of Mary Oliver this week and in this session before the world changed so drastically and so many times over in the last week and also in the last few months. Um, Mary Oliver, I'm sure, is one of many of our favorite poets who died at the age of 83 last January. She was a prolific Pulitzer Prize-winning poet and essayist whose work spanned many decades. Also in keeping with the theme, she was also openly gay and lived in Provincetown, Massachusetts with her partner of more than 40 years, Molly Malone Cook, until Cook died in 2005. Any of us who are familiar with Oliver's work know her true passion was environmentalism. She used a lot of motifs from the natural world, flora, fauna, planets, all of that good stuff, and was very beautiful in the simplicity and the way that she would capture the essence of a lot of these natural systems with such distinct beauty. Her writing is flowery in a literal sense, but not figuratively. However, she was often so written off as unimportant, too decorative, too feminine to be taken seriously. And it makes me consider, how does the patriarchy influence how we view, respond, and respect art or nature or community, both human and ecological? I know that as queer people and as trans people, we think a lot about the oppressive systems that we exist within, because we're forced to face up against them a lot of the time and see the ways they impact members of our community in different ways. So how do these systems impact our connections to each other, to the world? I'm reminded of studies that show that men are less likely to care about the environment or to use reusable bags because they consider it feminine, and how many men feel isolated because the vulnerability required for deep friendship is condemned within Western masculinity. I'm reminded of all the ways that we need to make change and the deeply ingrained ways that also hurt us, that we feel reluctant to relinquish or to move past. So then how do we find ourselves here at the 2Rivers Festival, celebrating our relationship to the earth? How do we celebrate our relationships with the more than human world if we can barely live in right relationship with one another? I know that we've all seen the kind of violence and outrage that's been happening lately. And I think that we need to take time to really see it if we're looking to make the change that we say we want to see in this world. In which ways do those of us who are privileged to be able to reliably feel safe in our neighborhoods, who have never felt direct harm from police, and who have the absolute luxury of staying out of politics because money and our social context allows us that privilege and that luxury? How does that impact the ways in which we view nature and our relationship to it? Are we not all nature? We can't pretend to tease apart the environmental justice from the work of racial, economic, and the work for civil rights. They are intrinsically and undeniably related. We are all intrinsically and undeniably related. And speaking back from queer communities, the first Pride was a multiple day riot against police brutality. And I think that those of us who are grieving the loss of our annual celebration and moving into some of the digital and virtual versions of it recognize this, and we're seeing some of the rebellions taking place online. And I hope that in lieu of the money that you might spend on rainbow swag and hotel rooms for the Pride celebrations that you might be missing, that you'll be sending those to frontline activists instead to continue to show that care and support for the struggle moving forward. It's important to note that being an activist for the environment does not excuse you of oppressive behaviors in other realms. I think it's important to note that Michael Vick so famously made aware by the general populace through his abuse of dogs. It's worth noting that he actually served more time in jail for killing a dog than all of the cops combined that have killed the last 493 unarmed Black men. I think the ways that we value life need to be reassessed. I think that we need to cast a wider umbrella and say that if we are here to support the earth and all the living things within it in order for it to thrive and for our continued futures, we need to include all of us in that dream of a shared future. Because this is not justice. However, this, like everything, is not a simple issue. There are complexities to the current situation, and the rebellions after years and years of oppression and state-sanctioned violence are no easy thing to wrap your head around. So I implore you, if you're having a reaction to some of the things I'm saying and some of the things that you're seeing in the news, and if the news has you worried about the threat to your safety that they say these protesters might be, to widen your lens, to talk to your neighbors, to diversify where, how, and from who you get your news from, to recognize who owns what media outlets and what stake they might have in the matter. Just like in the ways we try to keep an awareness of our impact on the earth, so too should that include the other human communities that we share it with, and our own role in either the violence or the justice that is being served. Now, I'm not telling you what to think, and I don't believe that that would be very helpful anyway. As with all things, as Mary Oliver knew well, there's little integration for the things that come off as preachy or absolutist. As writer Ruth Franklin said about Mary Oliver, with few exceptions, Oliver's poems don't end in thunderbolts. There's this gentle form of moral direction. And this is too simple an answer and often overlooked, to take the time to really listen and to really see. Mary was dragged throughout her lifetime by critics who called her work really simplistic. We can only assume that a lot of it stemmed from misogyny, even homophobia, should they have known. And similarly was written off as an unsophisticated poet, often due to her gender. To focus on the impact that looting is to ignore the impact of decades of police brutality, murder, and centuries of oppression. To ignore Oliver's work, too, is to ignore the heaviness. The way she spoke of life and death, oppression and destruction, sex and birth that permeates her writing, and indeed all of nature. Anytime that you go outside into a natural space, you will see all of the above swimming around in unison at the same time. Death is rebirth, rebirth is death, nature is all parts of the cycle happening simultaneously. And Oliver also encouraged us to find our reason for living in things that seem trivial. We're good enough, valuable enough, whether or not society agrees. Looking around, Her poetry tells us in the commanding but melodic voice of a true queer elder that you need to relish in what you see and what you are. And as queer people, this has been a hard fight. And as people who are not white, they're still struggling to be seen and heard and respected for being who they are. And as white people, as settlers, we also need to show up and support one another to really see ourselves and see the full humanity and the full aliveness of the world around us, and to support that light where we see it. So we owe it to ourselves to observe and appreciate what surrounds us and what grounds us. After all, what's the point of living if we can't take a breather to experience the world in which we live? And what a better time to expand our metta, or our loving kindness, to communities who have experienced too much violence at the hands of people who look like, and through our taxes are employed by, us. So generally these are run as kinds of reflective hikes, and ideally we would have been taking a walk down the Aramosa River and stopping periodically to reflect on the nature of things and how they're unfolding for us personally as a community and as an ecological landscape. And I still encourage you to do that, but I want to minimize the time that we're here on the screen, and perhaps just leave you with a poem and one last prompt to consider. And I hope that you will take some time the next few days to take a walk down by the rivers, see what you can see, take time to really feel what you're feeling, and find a way to show up. So I'd like to close by sharing one last poem, the Prince Buzzard from Mary Oliver, and asking you to reflect on what you've been doing in this time of great need and great change. The world as we know it is gone. Between COVID and rampant global unrest, staggering wealth inequality, and escalating state violence, I think it goes without saying that this is the time to consider, what kind of ancestor do you want to be? How do you want to be remembered? By your family, by your human community, by the natural world around you? How do you show up for all of the above? How do you show up for one another? How do you show up for your communities? How do you extend your love for the earth and all of its inhabitants? And lastly, I want you to reflect on what action you will take in the next week. Really show up and support your communities in need. Okay, this poem is entitled Prince Buzzard. Prince Buzzard. Prince Buzzard. I took you so high in the air for a narrow boat and two black sails. You were drifting. In the depths of the air, wherever you wanted to go. And when you came down with your spoon in your mouth and your red head and your creaking wings to the land, dead, dead, dead. In the fields of spring, I knew it was hunger that brought you. Yet you went about it so slowly, settling with hunched wings and silent as the grass itself. Over the lamb's body, it seemed a ceremony, a pause, as though something in the quick of your own body had come out. For the dark work that was yours, which wasn't to be done easily or quickly, but thoroughly. And indeed, by time summer opened its green harbors, the fields were nothing but flowers, 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 from shore to shore. as a queer community, we're all too familiar with
Jasper,
grief and all the ways it shows up. Yeah.
I get a comment that your voice is fading in and out, so I don't know if maybe I don't know what's going on, but
yeah, I can try to be more mindful of that and speak up a little bit. But that was about all I had to share. If anybody has any questions or comments or things that are coming up in some of these reflections, happy to chat about it. But this is mostly meant to be a reflective space, and I'm still trying to figure out how to translate that into a virtual space. But I did want to end on a note saying that as queer people and as trans people, we're often very familiar with grief, whether that is our own grief, dealing with the grief of others and their expectations of us, if we've lost friends, families, communities as a result of living our authentic truth. We're also thinking about historically things like the AIDS epidemic of the 80s and 90s and early 2000s and how our communities have been frequently ravaged. We've lost a lot of people. Grief is no stranger to our communities. And I think in this time, our expertise is welcomed and needed, as is our solidarity, especially as white LGBT people. So I just wanted to leave on that and encourage you all to take some time in nature to reflect on how you contextualize yourself as a queer person, as an environmentalist, as somebody who cares for other living things, how you can make that love visible this week. And then Emma, I'm not sure if anybody has any other questions or reflections, or if you have anything that you'd like to share. Or if we just want to look at this soft nature for a while.
just thank you. This is probably my favorite 2Rivers Festival event so far. But yeah, we've just got comments that you did a great job, and Mary Oliver is Sarah's favorite poet. So thank you. But yeah, if anybody grateful to connect with queer folks in the community, thank you for holding space. So yeah, any other comments or reflections are totally welcome. If you want to turn your video on or unmute yourself, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, if anybody has any poetry or pieces they'd like to share or reflections about what's going on. Also, this can turn into a bit of an informal chat if people wanted to connect about any of these things. This is a community space meant to be shaped and informed by the collective. It's a little bit more difficult in a digital space, but the floor is open.
And I'll just say maybe something else, like if you have any other things to share with us, or I don't know, tweet at us, share on Facebook, like the 2Rivers Festival is like happy to receive any like content that you like come across on the rivers. Yeah, so if there's anything you want to kind of share, we can do that for you, like anything. So
great. Yeah, I don't have much right now. I have been trying to take like a lot of videos of the nature to be able to share it with people who have not been able to get out of their house and are kind of on home isolation for whatever reason. I also appreciate the initiative of the 2Rivers Festival to move so much of this content online, which is necessary given the times, but it's also like a big barrier for a lot of people, and it's vastly improved accessibility. And I know that Emma, you and I were chatting about that just earlier, but it's really beautiful to see all the ways that people can be creative and actually increase the amount of people who can participate through that creativity. And I hope that that's the trend that continues outside of these weirdly oppressive times.
Hello, can people hear me? I have a comment.
yeah.
So I just wanted to say that like I'm kind of I'm new to Guelph, and being able to have space where I can grow a garden and where I can actually get out into the world and see that things are coming to life right now have been
Mm,
really essential to my own like well-being and my ability to stay well enough to then support other people kind of like at this
mm,
time. And so that has just been, it's something I'm really grateful for and something I know I'm very privileged to have, because I know there's lots of people in Toronto particularly who don't have um, access to the same kind of space that we have here in Guelph,
mm.
to kind of see that the world is ongoing and still existing outside of that.
Great reflections. And yeah, it's important to contextualize ourselves to like the privileges that we do have. I share that sentiment in a big way. Um, I also have the privilege of having small strips of sunny grass outside of my home. And so we've been doing similarly. We've like really ramped up our gardens. Um, and we're vastly increasing the amount of like food that we're growing this year in anticipation that like there will be some people who cannot afford it. And as a result of like the way our food systems are set up, a lot of people might have to go without, or food price. There's some concerns about like food security moving forward. And so these are the little things that I can also do to like ground myself in the earth and like the changing seasons and, you know, our plant friends and our plant comrades, but also be able to provide for my community moving forward and, you know, offer that support. So I share those sentiments in big ways, and I think that it's really profound, and I feel very fortunate and grateful for the opportunity to do so. And similarly, to live in a place where two beautiful, majestic rivers meet and wind throughout our city. I think like having as much nature integrated into the city outline as Guelph has is very fortunate and very rare. I'm also very, very grateful to call this place home.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing. And I will also just plug again that Guelph Pride is kicking off this week, and there's a bunch of different events. There's a whole swath of community organizers and people who have all recorded children's stories for one of the family pride events. And so that's going to be a very cute video series if you're able to check it out. And there's just a ton of different events happening. So I do recommend going to the website and checking it out, especially if you're new to Guelph, if you're looking to find community. That's a great resource. The Nature and Transition series, generally we would be doing a bunch of hikes throughout the summer. Those have all been kind of put on hiatus until we're able to meet again in that capacity, but we're looking at different options for offering some of those things virtually. I've been looking into maybe creating podcasts that would be kind of like guided walks, which you can like download to your phone or device and then play as you walk down a certain trail, and it would kind of like lead you through different aspects of that, as well as some of the like cultural heritage and those sorts of things. But we're hoping next year, if circumstances change and we're able to meet again, we'll be doing far more hikes. We might be doing a Queers Do the Bruce Trail hiking series. So if you've ever been interested in taking on that trek, especially with a bunch of gays, we'll probably be organizing that as a group. And we're also looking at possibly offering some camping retreats as well. So keep posted if you're looking for an outdoor queer community. But there are lots of ways to connect with like communities, whether it's Guelph Pride, Out on the Shelf, which is your local LGBTQ resource center at 42 Garden, the 2Rivers Festival, hosting these amazing events over the course of 2 months, and a huge festival this year and all online, which is amazing, and big kudos to the organizers for putting that all together. There's also organizations like Nature Guelph and Guelph Outdoor School, one of the supporters of the festival, and so many organizations across Guelph that are really invested in seeing our communities, both human and more than human, thrive and grow. So I encourage you to connect with them, because there's a lot of really beautiful people and really beautiful relationships to be made here.
We had another comment that said that sounds really awesome.
Love that. Do people have any feedback or ideas about what else they would like to see, or things that they've noticed in Guelph, especially around like queerness or nature relations?
Hi, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Um, I was wondering if there could be some kind of online gardening, whether we have any capacity to set something like that up, whether it be like somebody like sharing their garden and like what they've learned about gardening this year, like maybe a Zoom call or something where we're all like out in our gardens sharing what we're growing.
That
That would
sounds
be really cool.
beautiful, and I love it. Yeah, I would love to do that. I have been taking a lot of videos of the like different gardening projects that I've been putting together. But I think having a little like collaborative queer meetup for it, even virtually, could be very cool. Love that.
Hi, this is Sarah. I'm also fairly new to Guelph. Jasper, when you talked about growing extra produce, do you have any ideas of like how you might distribute that to folks?
Um, I mean, I have ideas. I have like a large sort of like social base, and my like immediate geographical community, like my neighbors, and I, we're all in touch, and we're like a pretty close uh, group, which is really nice. Again, something I'm very grateful for, to have those immediate relations. But generally, usually over social media or person to person. Through my work with Arch, I'm familiar with a lot of folks in the community who are experiencing different barriers or might have different concerns around food security or being able to access fresh food. So I have a small roster of people that I have in mind, but generally according to need and yeah, identified locale and risk factors. But there are lots of different ways to kind of go about it. Lots of people donate to like the Hope House Food Market, which I know serves a lot of people and doesn't have as many barriers as some of the other food um, providers in the community have, as well as just like neighborhood little, free produce stands, those sorts of things. But generally, a lot of just like trading among and like sharing among friends and community. Um, yeah, if we were still able to like meet, generally I would just like bring them to different LGBTQ events that are happening and just bring extras that I had for people to take, but have to be a little bit more creative this year probably.
Yeah, I started to garden with my housemates as well. So I was just thinking when you said that, oh, like what are some ways where I might be able to distribute extra food if the garden does well this year? And I've found it a bit challenging to meet my neighbors. I feel partially it's like a very heteronormative family
Mm,
kind of neighborhood. So finding my space as a single-ish queer person, I'm still trying to meet folks.
mm, yeah, that's real. Similarly, our neighborhood is like predominantly like straight, heterosexual, nuclear families. I know like there's some trans kids on our block, which is very cute. And we had like a pre-existing friendship with our most immediate neighbors, and I think they were kind of our conduit to making those connections, but it can be very difficult. Our street has like a little like Facebook group chat, which I found helpful. People kind of like can chip in when they can, because I find that cultivating that intimacy, like one-on-one when you see each other sometimes on the sidewalk, especially given social distancing, can be a little bit more difficult. Um, but yeah, even like within the like queer community, I know that a lot of our forums, so like I help moderate the Gender Intersect Forum, which is like a hub for trans and non-binary people here in Guelph. And so we'll often post like resources or things that we have that we're able to share there, and there's been a pretty good pickup. So there's a lot of like community mutual support that comes from those sorts of things. And similarly, like events used to be a great way to kind of share those resources. But if you're looking for more nuanced ways to share, I'm open to suggestions and ideas, especially from anybody else in the group, or Emma, if you have ideas. I know like the Guelph Tool Library previously had like some swap days, and we have like a seed library, but unfortunately, because it's housed in a school, it's not open right now. And similarly, the Seed Project, they do a lot of really great work. They are operating right now. I'm not sure what their like donation basis might look like moving into some of the harvest seasons, but I know that they work really closely with a lot of groups and folks who might need those resources. Um, yeah, and maybe if other people have ideas, if you don't want to share them on video or on chat, you can feel free to like pop them into the chat, and maybe we can work to share some of that information.
I'm also thinking
I
of,
know.
I don't know what neighborhood you're in, but there are neighborhood groups
Mhm.
for like connecting to other things going on in your neighborhood. And there's also, I mean, some like groups on Facebook. I don't know if you've checked them out, but like if you just type in Guelph, there's like Guelph caremongering or like the Pals Trading Zone, and like things like that might be
Mhm.
cool ways to connect with other people you might not, especially now.
Mhm. Yeah, good suggestion. Yeah, I found the
For
community groups. Go ahead.
For donating produce, I know the Brant Avenue neighborhood group, they're accepting produce donations because they have a community garden, and they asked if we have extra produce from that garden to donate it. So I'm sure they would also accept produce donations from home gardens. It's the
Aw.
Brant Avenue neighborhood group. And they're connected with the Seed as well. So I don't know if they would keep the donations or if they would be going on to the Seed, but I know that the Brant Avenue neighborhood group are accepting
Oh,
garden
that's
donations.
great. Yeah, and I feel like if they're
Yeah.
connected with the Seed, then I'm sure they have like a pretty wide like impact net. So I think that could work out well.
Yeah.
Great suggestion. Oh, thanks for the hot tip. Is anybody in the group curious about starting a garden? It's not too late, depending on what you want to grow. But either way, it's probably not too late.
I found it's hard to locate some things this year. I mean, it's great that lots of people are gardening, but some things I've
Everything's sold
tried.
out.
Yeah, things are sold out, or I've ordered things and I've got substitutions, and so I asked somebody to get me chives, and I ended up getting leeks instead.
Oh.
They look very similar as seedlings. So I probably will have more leeks than I need in a while.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah, maybe we should start like a little like queer trading post or something. Share produce and extra things. But I feel like Buns is good for that. And a lot of the people on there are queer, so that's very nice. But yeah, I agree. There's been a lot of things that I've been trying to get this year that we just have not been able to. Luckily, we had like a pretty good stock of seeds and we're able to start a little bit early, but it's been a wild ride. And so many places are just sold out, which is great. I feel like the results of people getting more connected to the like land that they're calling home and being able to like grow and tend to plants and cultivate relationships with those plants can only be good. But like the great toilet paper wars, there needs to be a bit of a conscientiousness around it and an awareness of how that might impact other people who are not able to access some of those things, and kind of addressing food security as a collective issue as opposed to more of an individualistic one, as we are so prone to do as a society. So I love the like ideas of like produce sharing and finding ways to like get that care and all of those extra weeks to the people who need them. Well, that's what I have for today. I will try to keep folks posted about some of the ongoing programming with the Nature in Transition series and some of the other offers. We'll definitely look into maybe hosting some sort of collaborative queer gardening meetup, because that just hits me right in the heart and sounds great. And we'll keep you posted about ongoing opportunities. And again, check out Guelph Pride, really great festival, phenomenal organization, phenomenal organizers, really great cause, support LGBTQ people and communities. in the region, as well as the 2Rivers Festival. We're smack dab in the middle. You've got both festivals happening now. And to be honest, where else are you going to be? Pretty limited, so we'll do what we can to keep building community. And I want to thank you all for coming to join this session. It's no walk in the park that it was supposed to be, but hopefully this has been a nice little community check-in, and I hope that you're all taking care of.
Thank you. I look forward to meeting you all in person someday.
Yeah, me too.
I'll just say thank you again to Jasper and Arch and Guelph Pride, and yeah, please do check out the rest of the events that we have going on, especially if you have little people. There's lots of like kid-friendly events. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I can't remember, but check out the 2Rivers Festival social media too. And yeah, thank you again, Jasper. Oh, this is what I wanted to say. If you have any like feedback about this particular event or any other events with the festival, I think we have a survey on our website, but you can also email us any feedback. Like, we would love to know what you liked or want to see more of. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much, Emma, and thank you 2Rivers for hosting this festival, and thank you all for coming to this session. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you, Jasper and Emma. Sorry we were so late, but we're glad we made it.
Hope everyone
Okay.
has a good day.
Thank you.